Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're back with episode 5 of To Your Eternity. Last episode a lot happened. We got to see Hayase take everyone back to Yaname and then just throw him in prison. We got some interesting and, touching backstory on Parona, and we even got to see the entity Cultivator unlock a new power or ability. Now, it looks like Perona's trying to get everyone to escape from prison, and honestly, I hope they do because I feel like Hayase is sort of holding them back from getting out there into the world. But I'm interested to see what happens with Oniguma-sama as well. As you guys know, if you're interested in watching the reaction to this video, you can click the first link in the description below. It's going to take you to streamable.com where there won't be any ads or pop-ups. I'll give you a moment to click on the reaction link, and I'll see you guys back here after for the discussion. Wow, that was a sad, touching, heartbreaking episode. And I didn't really expect them to go that way. Here I was thinking, all right, they're going to escape now. They're going to travel somewhere else, maybe meet someone on the way, and they're going to start more adventures, right? Nope. This turn of events sort of caught me off guard because I wouldn't say there was any foreshadowing of this, but when I look back and think of how adorable and how cute and how they really just focused in on March's expressions and her attitude and just how she was, I can definitely see how they were really setting up for this moment to really make it have a huge impact and just give the audience, a punch in the gut, really, right? The scene where March was wounded and Parona was trying to save her life, honestly, it was very reminiscent for me of episode 1 when the boy was slowly dying and he turned back and looked at the entity and said, "Please remember me forever." And March told Parona she's going to have to grow up and become a mommy for her. She's going to have to carry on her dreams and her goals and her ambitions and basically carry on her life for her. We saw what kind of effect that had on Parona. Parona wanted to kill herself, and she was going to do it if it hadn't been for March's influence on the entity. And we saw March's influence on the entity back when they were in the carriage and being attacked. The entity in the form of Joan was watching the whole time, watching as March said, "Don't fight, they'll kill you." And then saying to herself when she saw Parona fighting, "What should I do? I can do something too." The entity saw all of that, and it was probably one of the reasons why he decided to jump out and start fighting. Now, before we get more into what's happening with Fushi and his abilities, I just wanted to talk a little bit more on March and some of the things she said in the episode. At the beginning, Parona was going to cut off a piece of Oniguma-sama and bring him back to the village so that she could convince everyone that he's dead and they don't need to keep doing these rituals and sacrificing someone every year. But March didn't want her to do that. And to me, it didn't really make sense because if he really is dead, then I didn't see a reason why they shouldn't do that. Now, obviously, I guess they didn't realize that the entity could transform into the bear, and, maybe they could use that to prove to the village that he's not going to be an issue anymore and they don't need to keep doing the rituals. But I think at the time, the best thing for them to do would have been to bring a piece of him back to show everyone. March was showing a very distinct point of view, and it's not necessarily the point of view that I would personally agree with, only because I felt like it was too narrow. But what it did do was really highlight March's personality and character, and it was a good example of a very particular point of view and philosophy. She says to her sister Parona, "He's not Oniguma." To us, of course he's Oniguma, but her point is that he's not what society has defined him as. He is, and I think she says this in her own words, he's just a big scary bear, right? March was really identifying with the bear in a sense that society had placed similar sort of definitions and expectations on her. They had decided her fate for her. What she wanted to be was a mother and a caretaker and have a family and grow up and learn about everything. But that's not what society had defined her as. They had told her that no, she is the sacrifice to Oniguma-sama. What is being shown here through March's character is the idea that you don't have to be defined by society, or even if you are, that maybe you shouldn't be. But now we get back to Fushi. Each time he takes a new step forward, every episode grows a little bit more, develops a little bit more. A whole new host of questions arises. At the beginning of the episode, the narrator says that Fushi became aware and then conscious. Then he began to act on his own accord, with a desire to change. But this raises the question, how will he choose his path? What seeds will influence the direction he chooses to take? Is he simply going to go based off of his previous life experiences and feelings and other impressions that have been made on him as he's collected stimulation throughout his existence? Or is there some inherent nature acting as sort of an impetus behind what he chooses to do that shapes the direction he chooses to go in? And this really is the existential question of whether or not you are the driver in your life, you're in the driver's seat, or whether you're the passenger. Whether you are born with a blank slate and you get to choose what direction you go on based on what it is that really speaks to you and touches you, or gives you a motivation or drive or will to live, versus are you born with some sort of innate characteristics or personality or aversions or compulsions? Do you do something because you want to do that, or those feelings of wanting to do something are what push you to do it? You know, we could think of all sorts of common things that most people have. For example, we like to be happy, we don't like to be sad, we don't like pain, we like pleasure. And these stimulations that we receive in the world, things that make us happy, things that make us sad or hurt us or make us feel good, we have a general nature, at least most people do, to follow the things that make us feel the way we want to feel, which is usually happy and good, and avoid the things that make us feel the opposite, right? Is that really us choosing to do that, or is that because that's how we are and we don't really have a choice? Or do we? For example, you could do something that makes you sad or hurts you. You still wouldn't be able to escape the consequences of hurting yourself, which would be causing yourself pain. Could you choose to embrace that pain, accept that pain, like that pain? It's really a heavy philosophical question. And if you ask me, I would say that it's a little bit of both, probably. Who knows, right? Another way that we could choose to look at this question of free will and what is going to guide the path that he chooses to walk on is the idea of karma. And I'm not talking about if you do something good will happen to you type of karma. That's a very sort of rudimentary and undetailed description of karma. Karma, a better way of thinking of karma is the law of cause and effect. So in the case of Fushi, all of these experiences and emotions and impressions and stimulation he's collected throughout his existence and growth so far is what pushes him and leads him and guides him down his path. So for example, because he ran into March, she taught him how to be a caretaker or a caregiver and how to care for people. If he had not run into March, he might not have developed that, and he might have gone down a different path, right? Maybe if he had ran into a criminal who taught him about stealing and killing and took pleasure in it, maybe the entity too would take pleasure in those sorts of things. It's hard to say, because you have to remember we're dealing with a blank slate here. We're not dealing with someone who already has a concept of the world and saying, hey, let me take you under my wing and we're going to become murderers, or we're going to become criminals and we're going to enjoy it. We're talking about a blank slate here who doesn't have a concept of anything. And if you expose that blank slate to something like that, it would have an impact on what the entity would decide to end up doing. Now, if the entity has some inherent nature or inherent guiding principles or concepts. For example, for humans, it tends to be we follow love. Then maybe running into a criminal might steer him off course for a while, but he would eventually get back on track to what he really wants to do, right? But that's the question, is we don't exactly know how he's meant to operate. In the concept of karma, whatever you do has an outcome, an impact on society, your family, yourself, your emotions, and nature, the world around you. And maybe that's why they had to kill March's character, because she really was a very specific point of view in the world, a very motherly caretaker point of view. If the entity kept being exposed to that point of view, that's the point of view it would cultivate. That's what it would end up becoming. And maybe that's not what they want for the show. If they wanted the entity to become some sort of hero for the show, to accomplish amazing feats and go on adventures, it would have to keep moving on. It wouldn't work if it just stayed in Ninana with March raising it, right? Another idea in the concept of karma is that although you're getting influenced by your previous actions and your current actions and everything that's happening around you and all the stimulation you're receiving, you still retain some ability to choose. So if you've been a terrible person your whole life, it's going to be difficult for you to escape the consequences of you being a terrible person all your life. And that's going to be bad relationships, trouble with the law, I don't know. Any number of consequences, most of which you won't be able to escape, and some of which you'll be able to have an impact or influence and change. The ability to change your karma. If you start being a better person, you can start to have some effect and change your life. So no matter what path you choose in your life, there's always the ability to take the reins and change the direction. Man, this episode was getting pretty deep. Fushi is now on the run and being chased by Hayase, who, to be honest, I did not think could survive a gigantic swipe from the bear. But she's looking crazier than ever with those insane scars on her face, and that arrow shot through her hand from Parona. That's another thing. It was great symbolism to show in just a couple episodes what a giant leap Parona has taken in her character. Literally just 2 episodes, basically, where, at the beginning she couldn't even shoot an arrow straight. And now she can hit that shot from however far that was. She was aiming for her head, but that is way better than she ever was before. It really shows that she, in a very short span of time, has gone through a lot, and it has shaped her. It has made her grow immensely. The last thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap this up is March entering that dream world and being able to have some influence on Fushi in her dream form. I think what we've established up till this point is that the entity can change into something that, 1, had this strong impetus or drive, and 2, I think they have to be dead at this point, because we've only really ever seen him transform after something is already dead. The wolf, the boy, oniguma-sama now. And this raises the obvious question, what is happening to these individuals when they die and they go to this dream world where they can see the entity? March saw oniguma-sama in the dream state, right? She also saw Fushi, and she was able to influence him when she saw Parona going to kill herself. She was able to influence the entity to want to stop that. This keeps going back to the philosophy discussion, right? Is it the entity's free will doing this? Or is he really being shaped and guided by the beings that he has decided to bring into himself that have shown him great impetus and given him lots of stimulation? Are we going to see the little parts of everything that he brings into himself show up as different characteristics and even emotions? Because that's another thing. As soon as March died and went to the dream world, all of a sudden, Fushi now has all of these facial expressions that he never had before. And who has the craziest facial expressions? March does. These people are basically going to live on through the entity. And I don't know if that's really going to be the individual or just a reflection of that individual, because of how the narrator said that the orb originally becomes a reflection. Those people are not actually there, living in some dream consciousness with the entity, that they're probably just reflections of those people and the impressions that they have had on the entity. But for us, for the audience, it's going to seem as if those people are living on through the entity. Now that events have taken such a turn and the entity is on the run, I have literally no idea what is going to happen next episode, but what I do know is that I'm definitely excited to see it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and the discussion and the reaction video if any of you watched it. I am really enjoying this anime, and I think it's got a really refreshing take on the genre. If you guys love this anime too, I'd love to hear it in the comments. I appreciate all your guys' support and likes and subscriptions to the channel. Everything goes a long way to support this. So thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.